From my home to yours, welcome to EMS at Sea Level. Today's guest is Andy Hyatt. He is the Senior Vice President, Global Customer Solutions at Plexus. Before we get started, Andy, can you give me a quick 2-minute introduction to you and to Plexus for any of the viewers that are unaware?
Sure, Phil. Thank you. Appreciate you having me here today. So I have, I'm a 30-year veteran of the EMS industry. In fact, I guess today or tomorrow might even be my 30th anniversary in the industry. So been around, worked for small, medium, and large EMS companies, and have done a variety of different things, from running plants to business development, customer management, all kinds of different opportunities. And so Plexus is a top 5 EMS company in the world, based in Neenah, Wisconsin. So headquarters is back here in the Midwest. I am based out here in the Midwest as well. The company is located with facilities all over the world: China, Malaysia, Eastern and Western Europe, Mexico, and then throughout the U.S. And so we have roughly 16 manufacturing facilities worldwide and 8 design centers. Okay. And so do product from everything from product development to manufacturing to aftermarket solutions. And so really provide services to customers kind of in all spectrums. So
yeah, and all different industries, all different sectors, I guess. So let's kind of deal with the elephant in the room, the whole COVID-19 thing. What's your experience been over the last month, 2 months, 3 months, as the whole thing's progressed around the world? What challenges have you seen?
Sure. Yeah, I think I've used the word unprecedented and unusual probably more than any other time in my life. It's been a really interesting time, and I think for a lot of people, a lot of companies, and certainly one of the biggest things that we've kind of talked about is that this is unique and different for all of us, for us in the supply chain side, for our customers as well. And I think that has created sort of an ability for mutual understanding of uncertainty and needing to be adaptable and responsive and patient. I think when I think about what this has been like, I think about it really in 2 contexts. And one is for those people in our manufacturing and engineering facilities that are coming to work every day, doing the work on the front lines, really to be able to support and serve customers. More than 1/3 of the business that Plexus has worldwide is building healthcare life sciences products. And so when you talk about being an essential business, which a lot of companies have talked about, for us, there's something very personal about that. Yeah. It truly is. And so, their world has been turned upside down in terms of the ability to come to work and do those things to support customers and build and design products and service them. And so there's that. And then on the other side, the indirect folks like myself and my organization, and whether it's finance or IT or any other part of the organization, supply chain, it is very different. And so it creates a different set of challenges. Here I am talking to you today from my living room. And everyone that I talk to is either on their kitchen table, their office, their basement, their spare bedroom. And it creates an entirely different dynamic in a business that is based upon relationships and based upon service and not a commodity. I think it creates a challenge that is very unique and different, and requires a lot of attention and focus to be able to kind of manage through that.
And I think it's really interesting what you said about, this using the word unprecedented an unprecedented number of times. But what's really interesting is that everybody's in that state. So there's a desire to collaborate. Have you felt that particularly with your customers, that there's been just a real, we're all in this together, let's all kind of get behind our goals and work together, rather than everybody's trying to nickel and dime everybody else in the EMS industry to keep these margins as wafer thin as they can?
Yes, it is. The conversations that I've had in the last couple of months have been vastly different than they were prior to that, I think. And so in my part of the organization, I'm responsible for the commercial side of the business. And so our market sector teams, which is everything from business development to account management. And so I've had a lot of conversations. Every day is filled with conversations with customers and our teams about, what are we dealing with? What are we going through?
Yeah.
We have had a couple of situations where we've had some positive tests for COVID-19, only a handful in all of our 19,000 people around the world. But in those situations, having to clear a plant, do a decontamination, stop producing, stop shipping for a few days, right? Not a long time, but ironically, we also had an earthquake in the middle of this, and of all places, Boise, Idaho. And this was literally, we had to clear the plant, we had to check things out. And so I say that to say, part of my responsibility is to do crisis notifications of customers. And so in doing that, sending emails to every customer in every facility when an event occurs, the amount of understanding and the response has literally been 100%. Thank you for telling us. Is there anything we can do? Please let us know. And it's a level of understanding that I did not expect. But yet I appreciate that much more because it is a reminder that everybody's going through challenge. And we tell people our customers are incredibly important to us. Our people have to be our number one priority. And when you go through this, that gets tested. Do you really mean it? And so for us, doing things like extra cleaning, extra decontamination, all the safety precautions that we are utilizing is really demonstrating to people that we care and that we're putting them first. And customers appreciate that. And they acknowledge and recognize that, which I think is great. So it's been an interesting experience in that respect.
Yeah, and it's a new level of unpredictability. You'll be able to write the book on we had an earthquake in the middle of a pandemic. That's a pretty unusual story. And you talked a lot about the kind of workplace disruption there, but there's also been disruption in terms of supply initially with the supply chain in China, and then obviously the demand disruption we're seeing now, which has kind of got two sides to it. One is disruption to demand because consumers aren't getting out and buying stuff, but the other is disruption to demand in terms of Defense Production Act and the essential goods that so much of your business has in it. What have you seen there as those disruptions have moved around the world?
I think it's been interesting when you look at the COVID situation in general. Obviously it first manifests itself, at least to the extent that we understand, in China. And there was a lot of concern at that time about the fact that is the epicenter of the technology, the supply chain for a lot of companies, right? And whether in the US or in Asia or in Europe. And so, I think that was managed really well through a lot of brute force and a lot of hard work. And again, you think of that and you think that had to be a year ago, but it was, 2.5 months, 3 months ago. And it's quite remarkable. Chinese New Year is about when things really started getting intense. And so, I think managing through that part, and then as it has evolved and the pandemic has evolved to cover the rest of the world, I think just really sort of having to understand how to communicate, and communicate again, whether that's with suppliers, whether that's with customers. We've had to take steps, and our supply chain organization has done a great job of not only, we're going out and reaching out to the supply chain as the pandemic has hit and check, are we going to get our parts? But we've gone so far as to say, how are you doing financially? And we've done early payments to suppliers at times. But watching that credit situation and really understanding how important that is to a solid supply chain. And so really kind of managing that side. And then of course, my side of the business being on the customer side, continually keeping in touch with customers and understanding their dynamic and recognizing that commercial aviation is hit really hard right now. Anything consumer, we don't do consumer products generally, so we don't have impact there, but aerospace and defense is a big part of our business. And so understanding the impacts are different than defense, are different than healthcare, are different than industrial. And so really just managing, kind of understanding both what's ahead of us in the supply chain and behind us in the supply chain at the same time has been a big part of the steps that we've taken.
Yeah, and when you look specifically at the fight against COVID-19 and your healthcare customers, are there many of those that have had to quickly pivot product, whether maybe shifted from another device to produce more product that's specific to this, or involved in producing PPE or consumables that are needed right now, and you have that kind of urgent need?
Yeah, I think I guess I'll answer that a couple of different ways. It's interesting. We, as I mentioned, healthcare life sciences is a big part of our business, and yet there are parts of healthcare that are not as strong today as others. And I think a lot of times people think about it as medical products, and they're all in one bucket. Elective surgeries, products used in elective procedures and elective surgeries and therapies are not strong right now because, as we know, in most places, certainly in the US and Europe and other places around the world, that just is not something that's being utilized today. And so you see kind of the brakes get put on some of those, but yet on the other side, when you're talking about products, whether they're respirators or, which is probably, people know more about respirators today than we've ever known. But also patient monitors and portable ultrasound and diagnostic imaging equipment in general, things like that, bronchoscopes and video laryngoscopes. And there's a lot of different types of products that the demand is certainly high. I think the whole respirator thing has been fascinating, and ventilators, because I literally have had, Phil, people call me and say, a bunch of people I know that have a bunch of money want to go design and build a ventilator. Would you be interested in helping with that? And we've seen Dyson jump in. We've seen Tesla for a while, GM, a lot of people doing it. And I think that that's good to see the kind of the world rally around a need. I think it's also, though, an interesting thing, because not everybody's going to be able to do that and get it to market. We will have a 10-year supply of ventilators when we're on the other side of this, if not more.
Yeah, we're going to have a big backlog there, aren't we? Absolutely, for sure. So. I think for me, when I looked at the ventilator debate, what was interesting was the whole administration looking to people like Ford and their pickup truck lines to build ventilators. And probably like you, my immediate thought was, wow, we've got a EMS industry that is geared up to move from one product to the other, to pivot really quickly, and to launch a new product really fast, or to ramp a product really fast. So actually seeing that happen is I think really valuable, and a really valuable lesson. And as the FDA and organizations like that start to look at how they manage the supply chain, I think the value of the EMS industry is really clear. So I think that's been fascinating. Certainly. When you look at the situation, obviously we've got a urgent situation, and then, coming out in the medium term, we've got this kind of important realignment. And then there's this post-COVID world, which I think is going to have changed, because there's changing sentiment, particularly with respect to China and the supply chain and different things. How do you see the short, medium, and long term for your business, for Plexus?
Well, certainly, we talk about at Plexus, our mission is to help create products that build a better world, and which has taken on an entirely new meaning during this period, right? Of building medical products and that are literally on the front lines helping
saving lives,
deal with this sort of pandemic. And so, for us, we talk about kind of our business in three areas when we sort of look forward, and it's focus, execution, and discipline. And so the focus side is we go to market in very specific market sectors: healthcare, life sciences, aerospace, defense, communications, and industrial commercial. Those four are what we do, and that is all we do. And so my organization has responsibility for developing the strategies for who do we want to work with in those market sectors, what capabilities do we need, what footprint do we need, and then to go execute to that. The execution part of it is really kind of what we view as our strength, our kind of secret sauce is, the Plexus execution engine, and doing the work in manufacturing, designing, servicing products successfully with a high degree of customer satisfaction. And then the discipline part for us is really just understanding what we're good at. We know who we are, who we want to be when we grow up. We don't stray from our purpose and our core. We talk about, we don't chase the shiny object. And it's easy to do that in this industry.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Revenue is so exciting and sexy at times. But the reality is you will not succeed if you stray from who you are. Yeah. And that's been, I think, a big key to success for Plexus over the years, is really understanding who we are and staying focused on task, who we are in it. And it's worked for us, 40 years of, success and profitability, and we'll continue to do that. So
yeah, and I think that what I call the magpie approach, that chasing shiny objects, is always been a challenge of the EMS industry. And whenever I've had that discussion at kind of C-suite or board level with EMS companies, I've always reminded them of the S in the EMS as the most important. You're in the service industry. You're not a brand. You're not an OEM. By all means, own some intellectual property if that's kind of a building block for a particular sector you're in, or whether that's manufacturing excellence IP. I think that's great. But, don't start building products and competing with your customers. It doesn't make sense. And there's a litany of attempts that have failed. So I think there's
some history there.
Yeah, there's plenty of evidence to say that service is where you're at. One of the things that I've been curious about in this process is I think the companies in the EMS industry that have embraced digital transformation, particularly in their supply chain, have had the visibility that you need to be able to provide data to your customer, but also to be able to pivot quickly. Do you think there's going to be an increased demand, an increased appetite for digital transformation, more industrial IoT talk, more industry 4.0 talk?
Yeah, I think so. And we've been hearing that for a long time, and I think we continue to do. And I think, when you go through a situation like we're going through now, the idea of connectivity, the idea of visibility, the idea of communication and linking all the different aspects of the supply chain more tightly and more readily, I think just becomes that much more important. And so the components of digital transformation and Industry 4.0, and whichever sort of label you'd like to give it, I think are going to continue, I think, going forward for sure. Yeah, and I hope an increased appetite, and we can kind of push that debate forward. I think that's really valuable. So you've got a whole team in lockdown on your customer side. How are they all coping? How are you keeping everybody sane? Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about it earlier. The S. I'm glad to hear you say that, because I use that description of EMS a lot with people. Is what's the most important of the E, M, and S. What's the most important of them? And to me, it's absolutely the S. And so part of that is, selling and developing relationships and building your business in a non-commoditized service environment is really difficult when you're sitting in your kitchen or your office and you're not out in front of customers. And I talk to our business development people frequently, and believe me, they're very, very uncomfortable with the current situation, because they want to be able to get out and do that. But we've had to pivot, and our marketing communications group has done a great job of creating a bunch of digital virtual factory tour vignettes, we call them. And so I was just in a meeting last week where a customer, we had wanted to take them to our Guadalajara facility to show them a production line of a product we're ramping for them. We were able to do a virtual tour to use technology to show the customer the line in a digital way that was not available to us previously. And we just the technology was there, but we hadn't put the effort to it because we could travel. And so really getting people to understand how to accomplish tasks in a different way. And it's difficult. And so we use video conferences a lot, like daily. I'm on calls all day long. Yeah. And 80% of them, we use video. and even internally. And the purpose in that is to stay connected. And when you're an office kind of person as opposed to a factory person, and you have an office and you see people every day and the interaction, it's enriching and it's important. Think about what you do when you've got 2 months where you're not in that. And so we have to be very intentional about getting out and connecting with people to remind them of, you're not alone. This is something we're dealing with together. And we've had team members that are doing virtual cocktail hours regularly, right? So, on a Friday at 4:30, they, all connect on Zoom or on GoToMeeting and have a drink and not talk about work. And, there's just, I think all of those things, they're very, very, the other thing I guess I would say, Phil, is I started 6 weeks ago, probably, doing twice a week. I call them open forums that all customer facing people for Plexus Worldwide are invited to join in. It's a 1 hour open GoToMeeting, and Tuesdays and Fridays, and GMs, program management leads, customer account people, business development people, sector leaders, all invited to just sit for an hour. And I kind of talk about things that are happening with respect to the virus and the companies, how we're managing it, but also when customers have questions about this or that, how do we deal with that? How do we think about that? And we have a chat window that people post questions or topics of conversation, and we spend sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, but twice a week. And there's 150 people that dial into this.
Wow.
But to me, it's about communication, and it's about everybody understanding out of that they're not alone. And it's just really, really important, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. You might find that's one of those things that you want to keep afterwards, because those 150 people definitely weren't in the same office as you. So being able to get back with them regularly.
Yeah, and it's people in China at it's at 8 o'clock Central Time, and so for them it's whatever it is, 10 o'clock at night after a long hard day. People in Malaysia and Europe, all over the U.S., and so it's remarkable, the appetite, and I think it speaks to the fact that that's where people, what they need,
the situation.
They need to be able to understand, to talk, to listen, to just kind of pull out of their daily the challenges of trying to serve customers and recognize there's other people that are in the exact same place that they are. It's really interesting.
It is, and communication. The two big things at the moment are communication and leadership. Those are the things that every company needs. It's a bit of an open, honest communication, what's going on, and some real leadership, because it's kind of that time where people have to step up. What about you, Andy? You don't get to go out to your local restaurants and enjoy all that good stuff. What are you doing at home? Are you binging on Netflix or Apple TV, or what are you watching?
Yeah, I do a little bit of that. I do try to go out to my local restaurants for takeout where I can to keep some of the local businesses supported as much as possible. Keep some money in the economy. Yeah, but my wife and I have some really close friends that live in Scotland, and they turned us on to the BBC shows, British Broadcasting, right?
Yeah,
and I'm hooked, and so my wife and I really enjoy, their series called The Tunnel. It was just tremendous. Luther is another one. Broadchurch. Broadchurch. Yeah, Idris Elba is an incredible actor. But so a number of those kind of shows that we've really enjoyed. The morning show on Apple TV.
Morning Wars. That was good. Yeah, I enjoyed that one.
Yeah. What's it called?
I think it's called Morning Wars. It's the morning news show. Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah, with Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah,
really good cast for that show, and so I've enjoyed that. So I get to do that a little bit, and my kids are all grown, and a few of them are kind of in and out of the house, and so
that's nice.
A different scenario than some of my team and other colleagues have with younger families. And again, recognizing that everybody's got those dynamics. It's remarkable the sort of patience that we all have with each other in our own situations of recognizing that the kind of the confluence of work and life it's all kind of come together here.
Yeah.
And we're all dealing with it. So
yeah, unique situations, unique times. So last thing before we go, Andy, what advice would you offer to your peers in this situation? I know everybody's in a unique situation, but what have you kind of learned and you'd like to share?
I think the biggest thing that I would suggest anybody in leadership in this time thinks about is the importance of transparency, openness, and communication. And those are, they can be considered soft words, but what we've learned through this and what we just talked about with these open forums, for example, that I have, our CEO is sending out regular notes weekly to our employees worldwide, kind of talking about things that we're going through and encouraging people again. And they seem like little things, but the impact that it has on people in a situation where people are scared, they're uncertain. I don't watch the news much anymore because it's I choose
cheery
to kind of read unbiased sort of sources of information, because I think it's so easy to get sidetracked. And so, as a leader, part of our responsibility is to bring people together and help encourage when encouragement's needed, challenge when challenge is needed. And I think that to me is the absolute biggest. And I found with customers or with my own team is the idea of continuing to share a vision, share a direction, share what's happening, and just be open is really kind of been a tank filler for a lot of people. And I would encourage others to sort of think about that in how they lead their individual companies. Is when in doubt, share, communicate, talk, provide a forum at least. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah, and it's just that thing of asking for help and, reaching out to, people within the organization, but to peers as well. It's hugely valuable at the moment.
Yep,
Andy,
really
thank you so much for your time and your candor. Absolute pleasure to speak, and thank you to everybody that's viewed this interview. Until next time on EMS at Sea Level, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Phil.